I'm a 24-year-old female and I have a story to share. I had my first boyfriend when I was a junior in high school. We did everything together. I wasn't working back then, but he was working at a local Burger King close to our high school. Friday was his payday. With his paycheck, we would go to movies together, and he would take me shopping. As young as he was, he knew how to treat a lady. My parents are religious and would frown on dating, so we kept our relationship secret. He was good to me, but deep down I didn't feel right being with him. After him, I tried dating a few others, but it never felt right with any of them either. The longest I've been with anyone was 5 months. The only physical thing that happened with them was kissing and touching. That's because I have made a vow to God that I will keep my virginity until marriage. Even though things didn't feel right with all the guys I have dated, I was determined to meet the one guy who would be perfect for me. In October 2020, I went to a friend's birthday and I met a guy who knew some of my friends and they accepted him. We struck up a conversation. He wasn't really my type because he didn't have some of the qualities I wanted in a man, but I felt I would give him a try and make things work. He was caring, loving, and very respectful to me. That made me turn a blind eye to his shortcomings. With him, I put all my effort, but there was still a voice in my head constantly telling me that the relationship wouldn't work. I ignored the voice and kept pushing. On our 3rd month together, I had a strong urge to be intimate with him. When I told my boyfriend about it, he asked, "Are you sure this is what you want?" I said yes and proceeded to lose my virginity to him. After we did it, I felt very bad and guilty. I have broken my vow to God, and it wasn't even worth it. I didn't enjoy the act as much as I thought I would. I decided that sex was overrated. I began to withdraw from my boyfriend. The more I withdrew from him, the more he became attached to me. After a while, I did things with him. He didn't want to let go, but eventually he did. But by the end of February 2021, I completely cut ties with him. Sometime in May 2021, I was in line at Starbucks trying to get a coffee. When a man behind me started talking to me. He struck up a conversation by telling me about an accident he witnessed when he was coming to Starbucks. He seemed very friendly and introduced himself as Sean. After we both got our coffee, he invited me to sit with him, and I told him that I had to go, but he was very persuasive. We talked for a few minutes before we exchanged numbers and went our separate ways. Our conversation came naturally to him, and we started texting and talking on the phone. I would later find out that he was much older than me. I was 23 at the time, while he was 35. I was concerned about the age gap, but when I spoke to my best friend, she encouraged me to give it a shot. This guy was smooth and oil. I had never been captivated by a man the way I was with him. He pushed all the right buttons and said all the right things. I thought I knew all there was to know about men until I met Sean. In the beginning stage of our relationship, he told me he was a single dad. He said, "I have a daughter with my ex." She abandoned us to be with another man. So I'm the one taking care of my daughter. I was touched by his situation. I tried to invite Sean to church several times, but he always told me he was busy. I believed him and I prayed for him. One day he came to my house in his car. Touched when I saw the car. I started having doubts about him. The car was too fancy for the kind of picture he painted about himself. It presented himself as a struggling single father who was trying to provide for his child, but his car screamed the opposite. Instead of asking him questions, I didn't. I was enjoying the bubble we were in, and I feared what knowing the truth would do. One day we were sitting in his car when he got touchy. I tried to get him to stop, but he refused. Things got out of hand and he had his way with me. After that experience, I became attached to him. That was when he started withdrawing. I called Sean for a whole week, and he didn't answer my call. He reached out to me 2 weeks later with excuses. He said, "I'm sorry. I've been traveling for work, and I got really busy." I forgave him even though my mind kept telling me to run away from him. He came to visit me and we sat in his car and talked. He promised me he wouldn't ignore me again, and I believed him. That day too, he had his way with me in his car. After he left, he ignored my calls and texts. I felt stupid cheap and used. I told my best friend what was going on, and she advised me to cut ties with him. I tried to do it, but I couldn't. I knew my relationship with him was unhealthy, but I have gone and fallen in love with him. A part of me was convinced that I would let him go if I get some closure. I didn't know where he lived, but I knew his neighborhood. Every day when I closed from work, I went there to look for him. Eventually, I saw him one day. He was heading home from work. I asked him, "Why did you say you wouldn't ignore me again?" It was only to do it. He apologized and gave me a lot of stories, using his daughter as an excuse. I started talking to him again, and he came to visit. We were sitting in his car when he tried to touch me. It's this time around, I was firm. I fought him with all my resolve, and he didn't succeed. He was holding his phone when a call came through. He tried to hide the screen, but I saw the caller ID. It said wife. I was so scared to confront him. So I just got out of the car and went home to cry. I was looking for closure, and I found it. I had been dating a married man without knowing it. Sean was a player and a master of the game. My naive self got played, and it hurts like hell. I decided to stop talking to him and moved on with my life. But unfortunately for me, I found out that I was pregnant just around that time. I called him several times, but he didn't answer my call. My best friend went with me to his house to look for him. He wasn't home when we arrived, but there was a woman in the house. She introduced herself as Sean's wife. This woman had a Muslim name and she dressed like one. I wondered if we were even at the right house. I described him physically to the woman, and she confirmed that he was her husband. I told the woman, "Please forgive me for what I'm about to tell you." I didn't know he was married when I met him. I went on to tell her about the events that led to my visit, including the pregnancy. The woman's first response was, "I believe that like many women, you have fallen prey to my husband's charm and lies. His name is not even Sean. His name is Abdullah and he's a Muslim. I'm sorry for the trouble he has caused you." She told me she would help me, and we exchanged contacts. I was surprised this woman didn't see me as an enemy but as the victim that I truly was. I wanted to laugh at myself for falling into such a messy situation, but I was in so much pain. Abdullah called me the following day, threatened me, and called me a stalker. He said that the next time you come near my house, I will shoot you. I swear. Write it down somewhere. I was shocked. My heart was broken. I was so stupid. Later, his wife called me. She said, "I'm sorry. I cannot help you. He has threatened to kick me out if I get involved. I wish you all the best." My response was, "Oh, what a mess." He called me to tell me that the pregnancy wasn't his because the dates didn't add up. He said he would help me to get rid of it if that's what I want. I was working to support myself in school. Having a baby wouldn't help my situation, so I agreed to get rid of it. Somehow my church elders found out and they advised me against it. They made me tell my family about it. My mother asked me to keep it, but my siblings said no. They said the man doesn't even want to accept responsibility for the pregnancy. This is not something you should do alone, especially with your financial situation. Don't keep it. I poncho. I thought about what they said, and they knew keeping the baby would be too much. They got me some pills and I took them. We lied to my mom and my church elders that I miscarried. I'm constantly wrecked with guilt when I think about what I did and the lie I told. My relationship with God has been distant because of it. I try to forgive myself and move on, but it hasn't been easy. This experience has taught me so much in life. I used to judge people whose life looked different from mine. I used to point fingers at people and call them names when they made mistakes. Now I know how wrong I was. I have learned to have empathy and to pray for others instead of judging them. I have decided to share my story as a way for others to use my story as a cautionary tale. I am praying that in God's time, my Mr. Right will find me. Until then, I'm asking you readers to leave a word of encouragement from me.